these people who were responsible for producing apparently, ostensibly objective research were themselves caught up in these family dramas. They were themselves becoming divorced. They were themselves having children who were becoming divorced. And they couldn't bear the disconnect between the objective reality and their own family situation. So they made the objective reality fit their subjective feelings. They twisted it. And I watched this happen. And I watched academics who were committed to the truth get denied grant funding because they said things which were unsayable about family breakdown. And I found that there was an almost impossible task in elaborating upon these objective facts, this objective evidence, without immediately being accused of being horrible personally to people. I was set upon by people who said, "How dare you call into question what I have done because I've done the best for my family. I've tried my best with my children." And I would say, "I didn't even know you were divorced." I'm not making any aspersions about individuals. Individuals cope the best they can with a variety of difficult circumstances. Many people who are divorced or who are bringing up children on their own do an absolutely magnificent job. They go to enormous and heroic efforts to protect their children. But nevertheless, it seems to me that these are situations of disadvantage. And isn't it better to try to avoid disadvantaging children wherever possible? In other words, we can't possibly entertain policy making which deliberately exposes children to disadvantage on the basis that it makes their parents happy, because we should surely put our children first. And when one's dealing with public policy, one has to deal with the reality as it affects the vast majority of people. That doesn't mean that you're not sympathetic to individuals going through these hard things. Well, those arguments went nowhere at all. The subjective ruled. My personal feelings trump the objective evidence. And this was part and parcel of something that I only realized after many years, that what was happening was not confined to this very emotional issue of the family, which clearly had emotional ramifications because people were personally bound up with this issue. What was happening was that the very idea of objective evidence was being cast aside because it was too inconvenient when it got in the way what people wanted, how they wanted to live their own lives. And as the years went on, it seemed to me that not only was evidence being cast aside, not only was apparently objective evidence by university researchers becoming subjective and warped and wrong and false, but the very idea of evidence was being overturned. The very idea of rationality and reason were being dismissed. And this was all part and parcel of what only appeared to me to be the case after many years, that on issue after issue after issue, family lifestyle choice, multiculturalism, deep green environmentalism, moral relativism, moral and cultural relativism, and all those isms, they were all ideologies. And the point about an ideology is that the idea is sacrosanct. Nothing can get in the way of the idea. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that all these ideologies were utopian. They were all predicated on a belief basically in the perfection of the world. So multiculturalism would eradicate prejudice from the human heart completely. It would stop war. It would stop conflict. Lifestyle choice would eradicate bigotry and the bigotry over differences in people's lifestyles. So no longer would people look down on people who were divorced or single parents and all that kind of thing. They were all utopian. Deep green environmentalism was about saving the planet from frying and being destroyed completely. So anyone who disagreed with these ideologies, anyone who said, well, actually the evidence shows this is wrong, factually wrong, that couldn't happen because the ideology couldn't be gainsaid, and because these ideologies were all to do with the perfection of the world, anyone who spoke against them was not simply wrong, they were evil. And it couldn't be said because it was such an evil thing. And so you found that evidence became politicized. It became called right-wing, ultra-right-wing, and all the rest of those epithets, and it became unsayable. And the people who dared to say it found themselves bullied and ostracized and persecuted and removed from their social, they lost their friends, they lost their professional advancement, they were threatened with their jobs, some of them lost their jobs, and so you have the situation we have today. And the reason I wrote that book, The Guardian Angel, was because what had happened to me in my professional life, when I started out, I worked for nearly 20 years for Guardian newspapers, the very heart of this liberal universalist ideological perspective. And what happened to me over that period was as I fell foul of that world very badly. But what happened to me seemed to me to illustrate what had happened to the West, what happened to Britain and to the West. And so through the story of what happened to me issue by issue, I could actually tell a bigger story of what happened to us in the West.